Well, let's bring in Dr. Alice Rothschild. She's a health advisory panel member with the activist organisation Jewish Voice for Peace. She was last in Gaza in August, and today she joins us live from Seattle. Dr. Alice, good to have you with us. So thousands of pregnant women in Gaza face the prospect of giving birth in a war zone. All this whilst the killing and the bombing continues. And there's very little medical help left in Gaza. I mean, these women face a terrifying prospect, don't they?
Absolutely. And I think one of the things we need to remember is that before the war, because of the Israeli policy of de-development, the healthcare system was already on life support. So now we have 2/3 of the hospitals non-functioning. The third that are left are barely functional. Women who are pregnant are living in the same conditions as everyone else, which means lack of safety, risk of dying, lack of shelter, no fuel, inadequate amount of food, no clean water. I mean, just horrific conditions. And pregnant women are much more vulnerable. So what this means is that a woman facing these conditions has a much higher risk of congenital abnormalities, miscarriages, stillbirths, preterm labor. And then in labor, these women don't know where they're going to go. So not only have they had no prenatal care, but they don't know where they can deliver. So women are sometimes risking their lives to get to a hospital. Sometimes they're delivering, in crowded apartments or in tents or in rubble. And if they get to a hospital, these hospitals, they don't have pain medicines, they don't have antibiotics, they are very short on staff, the hygiene is terrible. So it's not like getting to a hospital is a great savior at that moment.
Yeah, and Dr. Alice, you're a physician, so you know that giving birth is difficult at the best of times. So what are the challenges then that face medical staff who are desperately trying to help these women give birth under these dreadful conditions that you've just outlined?
Well, they're dealing with women who have no prenatal care, so they don't know, does this woman have diabetes? Does she have hypertension? Does she have lupus? What are the underlying diseases and the diseases of pregnancy? So these pregnancies are sort of by definition high risk at this point. And then you're faced with a woman who's had no preparation, and you have very little to offer her in terms of support. I mean, there have been reports of C-sections being done without anesthesia. So the staff, which is totally worn thin, exhausted, stressed out, dealing with, thousands of injuries. And then there's a pregnant woman in labor who, for instance, might need a C-section. She's competing with all these other people with huge amounts of needs. So it's just a disastrous situation. And then when the baby's born, is there oxygen for resuscitation? Are there IVs if the baby needs an IV therapy? Are there antibiotics? These are all not present in most of the hospitals.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and say, Dr. Alice, I mean, we ran that story earlier where one pregnant woman in Gaza has the further hardship of being displaced and also losing most of her family's support structure. That's important as well. I mean, this just adds another layer of difficulty and complication, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And if you think about a woman who's just had a baby, she's very vulnerable physically and emotionally. She needs a lot of care. She needs support for breastfeeding. She needs adequate nutrition and hydration. All of this is non-existent. And then she's going to take her baby back to a tent or to an apartment with 50 of her relatives and no heat in the middle of winter when it's cold and wet. So this is a disastrous situation. The other thing that's been very disrupted is the whole vaccination program. It's estimated that almost 17,000 children have not gotten their vaccines in the last 2 months. So, there's all sorts of diseases that are preventable diseases that are now present in children. And this baby will be exposed to children and also not get its vaccines.
Dr. Alice Rothschild, we have to leave it there. Many thanks for your time and your analysis. Thank you.